Here, no, just take a bite. You want the whole thing? Okay. Hey, Scott here, Scotty's Animals. So I'm still in the middle of cleaning the piggy room. Well, it's a never-ending chore, but I got a message, actually a number of messages, where people were asking me to do a video about how to keep your piggies warm in the winter or in the cold, or especially if the power goes out. So I thought about it for a little while, and I've got a couple tips and techniques to keep your piggies warm and comfortable in the winter, in the cold, and especially if the power goes out. So let's talk about that. If you're new to the channel, I'm Scott. I'm a volunteer at the LA Guinea Pig Rescue, and this is Nate. And let's talk about it. So first of all, you want to keep your piggy room insulated, or wherever it is that you have your guinea pigs, you want to make sure that it's not drafty, that it is a room that when the power is on, it's very comfortable for them. A lot of people will ask me, what is the temperature that's appropriate for your piggies? And I always say that if you're comfortable, then they're going to be comfortable. But basically, 65 to 75 is ideal temperature. If you want to put on a sweater, then they probably want to hide in a fleece tunnel or a cuddle sack. So that's crucial, that if you're comfortable, they're comfortable. But and another thing, if you look behind me, what is this big ugly thing in the window? Well, it's a big piece of wood, and then around it is a couple fleece blankets. And that is meant to really keep the warm air in and to prevent a lot of the cold. That it's a big glass window, so the window itself can be cold. So it's just an extra layer of insulation. I'm not blocking out the sun. It's here in the winter time to keep the piggies that live close to that window warm and insulated. Now, of course, they have two houses. They've got the corner space houses, which I really love. Look, there's BB having his lunch down there. But not just that, under the Fiddlesticks tunnel, you can't really see, but under the Fiddlesticks tunnel, there is a fleece tunnel just like this. And so that, okay guys, I'll give you guys some treats soon. Mike is feeling much better, in case you're wondering. Underneath those Fiddlesticks tunnels are fleece tunnels that they can go in if they're feeling cold, or if they just want to hang out where it's soft.
Hey, your butt is hanging out. Come on, get in there more. Where's the cookie? Oh, did you drop the cookie? Well, you can have a pea flake in a second. Okay, he's gonna hide in the middle of the tunnel. It's not cold in here, but come here, Nate. Come on. You gotta help me do this video.
So having insulation for your piggies in general is a good idea in the winter. Having a fleece tunnel that they can go into, or just an igloo or a house, really is bare minimum. That's more for their sense of security, but something soft and insulated that they can hide in is going to be the way to go. What are you doing? Nate, you are just not helping me. Okay, so what happens if the power does go out? Now, if the power goes out for short term, that's why it's really important to have that insulation, and to make sure that wherever your piggies are is going to be the most insulated it can be, to retain that heat, and hopefully the power will come back on. But I thought about this for a little bit, and if you were dealing with a power outage for a number of days, where the room's just going to get cold overnight, it's going to get really cold, you might think about moving your piggies, and it depends how many piggies you have and what your situation is. But I always love to keep a bunch of pet store cages in general. So if I had a pair of boys that I knew would get along fairly well, most of my bonded pairs get along just fine, I would move them to a smaller cage, like a pet store cage, or I could put a blanket over, but I would put a blanket over a smaller cage and put a couple fleece tunnels in there, and then that way, you could actually move that cage next to a window in the daytime, and it will absorb some of that sunlight and it will get warm. Now, it might even get too hot. So I always recommend having some kind of a thermometer. You know, you can get really cool decorative thermometers that you just hang on the wall and they just look nice. Or you can also get like a simple fish tank thermometer, and you can get a thermometer like that. You should be able to get a thermometer at the dollar store or anywhere very cheaply for about $1 or even less. You know, maybe even find a thermometer on your keychain. Just something to let you know what the actual temperature is in their cage. Nate, why are you so shy? Why are you so shy? I love you. Don't bite me. I know. So I also thought that they do make these chemical warming packs. You know, you shake them up or something. You maybe have to tear something and then you shake them up, and then they're like pocket hand warmers. Well, I wouldn't just throw one of those in the cage, and I wouldn't necessarily put it under their fleece. Come on, stay with me. But maybe taking a couple of those hand warmers and sticking them in a couple layers of sock. Then, you know, just like in the summertime when it's really hot, we do a frozen water bottle in a sock. This could be, hey, this could be like the reverse of that. You have a couple layers of sock with a hot, you know, one of those hot pocket hand warmers. Don't give your guinea pigs hot pockets, because you shouldn't even be eating those. There's plenty of healthier, better things that you could eat. Just make some soup. Just make some soup if you're cold. So that might be an option too, if it gets really, really cold, is to try one of those chemical hand warming things in a couple layers of socks. But it is true, your piggies, they will do okay as long as they have a warm thing to go into. Because, you know, if you think about those sleeping bags, there are sleeping bags that actually will keep you warm even in like negative, you know, 20-degree weather or something like that. So if you think about a fleece tunnel and a cuddle sack is the guinea pig equivalent of one of those, you know, extreme temperature sleeping bags, then they're going to be just fine. But I would think that also having a towel over the cage is going to make it so that whatever warm air, whatever warmth that they generate through their own body heat is going to stay in there, and there's going to be less of a draft. You know, and maybe you want to leave a little part exposed so that they can get some good airflow. But if you have a wire-based pet store cage with a blanket over it, I don't think they're going to suffocate or anything like that. I think they'll be fine. Especially, you know, they're not stuck in a, you know, like the back of a car with all the windows up. They're in your house, which has a lot of fresh air. But there are more things to think about than just keeping them warm, because once you're warm and comfortable, you know, of course, you're going to be hungry. And if the power goes out in the winter because maybe there's some extreme storms, there's ice all over the roads, you know, maybe the stores aren't open, or maybe you're snowed in, or the roads are too slick and it's just dangerous for you to drive. That's why it's important to have at least a month of pellets. So now something cool to think about is that if the power goes off in the winter and your house is cold, you don't really have to worry about the stuff in your fridge going bad. So, you know, a couple days before a storm, stock up on the food that you like to eat, some fresh veggies for your piggies. And if the power does go out, you know, well, if the freezer starts to thaw, you know, it might not be freezing in your house like a freezer, but you can just take all the stuff that's in your freezer and take it outside, like your non-dairy ice cream. You can just take that stuff outside and put it in the snow, or take you take a cooler and you put all the contents of your freezer and you put that outside on your back porch or something. So I wouldn't worry about the stuff going bad when it's that cold outside. There's plenty of ways that you can keep that stuff good. But there's a number of things that you can keep. Like I always keep, you know, several months worth of rice and beans that are just basically ready to go. Canned food is great, but, you know, dried beans, they'll last a year. And you can have packs of rice. So if your power goes out, chances are you might still have gas, and you can use your stove. But if you can't use your stove, I definitely recommend a little camping stove. There are propane camping stoves that you can get. They're anywhere from about $20 or $30. I even saw one for $12 at the dollar store. And then you have a couple of those propane canisters, and they'll last a long time. And in an emergency, that's great. Now, obviously, the obvious thing that I didn't mention is a generator. I have a generator because here in the summer, it was 117 degrees here in the summer. And last year in California, we were setting records. And so when it's that hot, it could easily get well over 90 in here if I can't keep a fan. Are you peeing? What's happening? Did you just pee? Did you just poop? You're supposed to poop inside the cuddle sack. Get your butt in there. Come on, Nate. Come on. You gotta earn those pee flakes. So having a generator in the back. Now with a generator, you want to put the fuel stabilizer in there, or after a couple months, you're going to realize that it's not going to start. And you want to start your generator every few months and run it for about 15 minutes or so, just to make sure that it's running, and that's what they generally recommend. I've had the same amount of oil in my generator for about a year and a half, because actually 2 summers ago there was a power outage. Luckily there wasn't a power outage here, but all across Joshua Tree there was a good 15 miles worth of houses, and they all had the power out. So I went and I got a generator, and the oil that I put in that generator, it's still just fine. But you want to check and do regular maintenance and just make sure that your generator is still operating. So a generator, and a generator is one of those things where if you were able to run a portable heater on a generator for just an hour or 2 hours, you could really warm the room back up, and that might be just enough. You just do that every few hours, and that would actually keep it just enough, warmth that, you won't have to worry about it. Now, of course, there are also online, I saw power banks. If you start Google searching generators, then before you know it, you're going to get targeted ads for like these power banks. So there's these power banks where, when you have power, you charge it up, and it'll keep a charge for quite a long time, many months, I believe, and then you can plug in stuff and you've got hours worth of power. And these are just electric power banks. They don't require gas. But when you get the gas stabilizer, your traditional generator, which is usually a lot more affordable than these power banks, it's going to last. You could really have the gas in there for many months, maybe even a year, and you won't have to worry about it. So definitely something to look into is a generator or a power bank. So just like I said, you want to keep stock of about a month's worth of extra guinea pig food, and of course you want to have a few gallons of water in case there's water problems, because in Texas, actually, not only are they having power outage issues, they're having water issues, which you don't usually see simultaneously, but in a real serious emergency, you never know. And if this past year, if 2020 hasn't taught us anything, it is to be prepared. So definitely, I was a Boy Scout, and so being prepared, that's actually the Boy Scout motto. But, that's not just something that we say at a Scout meeting, that's like how we live.
Live it!
So you want to be prepared. And having a month's supply of food and a month's supply of water for your piggies, that's because really if you had a few gallons of water, that is going to last. Even in a room like this, a couple gallons of water would get my piggies, for a week or so. So we're not talking just about food for your piggies. Obviously, you're the one that's going to take care of them, and you've got to survive, and you've got to thrive. And if you're so focused on yourself, you won't be focused on your piggies. So making sure that you have food and that you have water and that you're taken care of is going to keep you strong and healthy so that you can take care of your babies. So I mentioned that I always have rice and beans. Now you can have some canned food, but dried beans will last essentially forever. And I keep probably 10 packs of rice in my freezer. And even if the power goes out, if you have a propane stove, you should be able to be cooking rice and beans and whatever else you want. Sorry, actually, you know what? It's butane. These little tiny camping stoves are butane. But, you know, the same thing. If you have a grill that has propane outside, then you've got a number of options. So having just a gas grill, or, you know, even if you just have a little Weber and you have some charcoal, you know, you can easily boil water with, you know, you got charcoal and lighter fluid in your garage or wherever. You know, there's obviously a number of ways that you can make a safe fire. And if your whole neighborhood's covered in ice, you know, you're not going to have to be worried about the dry fire warnings that we have out here in California. But out here in California, especially in the summertime, you know, you got to be very careful, and it's not advised to be, you know, burning wood, especially outside, and especially with wind and things like that. So I find that those little butane camp stoves are just perfect. They're little, they're compact, you can store them easily in a small space. They're just super awesome. What other techniques are there? What other ways can you store food? I love fermented veggies. Now, it's not just all about pickles, but there are many things that you can ferment. And when I say ferment or pickle, I'm not talking about boiling and then adding vinegar. I'm talking about the old school lactic acid fermentation that our ancestors used to actually get through the winters when there wasn't power. I would highly recommend this book. I'll put a link in the description. It's called The Art of Fermentation by Sandor Katz. Now, it sounds like it's a book all about making beer, and not really. It's actually a book about how to preserve foods, how to create amazing flavors through lactic acid fermentation. Now, if you don't know what that is, or if it sounds gross, it's quite simply chopping up your veggies, sprinkling salt, and then when the water leaches out of them, you pack them in a jar, and just the nature of packing them in a jar causes the juice, the water, to fill the jar as you're cramming them. And then you take a little bit of that extra liquid that's leached out and you pour it right on top so that these veggies are submerged. And then in a couple days, they'll start bubbling like crazy. Now, if it's freezing in your house, it might take a little bit longer, but these are one of those things that you want to do ahead of time. My trifecta is jalapenos, garlic cloves, and radishes. So you chop up radishes, you chop up jalapenos, and then you crush the little garlic cloves, and you just put that in a Tupperware. You sprinkle not too much salt, not a little bit of salt, but the right amount of salt that it evenly covers them, and you'll start to see the liquid leach out of your veggies. And then you stuff it in a jar, and you don't want to cover that jar too tightly. In a couple days, you'll see bubbles and bubbles, and this stuff will last over a year in your fridge, and it will actually last, could last 6 months or more, really indefinitely, just on the countertop. So right now, I haven't even put these in the fridge. I have sauerkraut, same thing. It's just cabbage. You chop it up, you sprinkle salt on it, and it will last 6 months just sitting on your countertop. Well, it won't last 6 months because it's so good. You're going to be putting it on everything from, I put it on my veggie burgers. I put the sauerkraut actually in my spaghetti pasta. You can put it on sandwiches. It is you can just eat it. Anytime I'm cooking with it, I always just have spoonfuls of it because this actually has really good probiotic bacteria. It's like basically Benebac for people. And so cooking with it is great. It has great flavors and it preserves the food. But when you eat it raw, when you eat it fresh, you're getting that gut bacteria that's going to keep your gut healthy. So same thing, I said cauliflower. Did I mention I also did cauliflower? So I basically chopped up the cauliflower, sprinkled some salt on it. Not that much water leaches out of the cauliflower, but you cram it in a jar. I actually did it with just a little bit of carrots. And so I cram it into a jar, and I used an empty pickle jar after I finished, just like my generic, these are vinegar pickles. I mean, they're not lactic acid fermentation. The pickles that you get at the store, like your classic hamburger pickles, those are not fermented in this way. They actually will sterilize them by boiling them, and then they use vinegar to get that pickled flavor. So those aren't the same as really the lactic acid fermentation pickles that are the real pickles. So you can do pickling cucumbers, you can do cauliflower, you can, in the book I think he says if it doesn't move you can ferment it. So you can pretty much ferment anything, and it's true. Some things ferment better than others. Some things that don't ferment that well you can put with other ingredients that do ferment well. Like I tried to do just all peppers and they didn't seem to ferment as well, but when you put a few peppers in with something, actually jalapenos do really well, but for some, or tomatoes don't do very well. Anyways, it's fun. You're going to get lost down the rabbit hole of experimenting what works and what doesn't work, but you save your pasta jars. There's a million ways that you can ferment, so I highly recommend that book, The Art of Fermentation. And really, then you're going to end up with a fridge full, with the countertop full of delicious fermented veggies. These veggies, 6 months later, my jalapenos, you bite into them and they snap. They're so crisp, like the day that I chopped them up. So amazing stuff. I can't sing the praises enough. BB's still having his lunch. So I hope that gave you a little bit of insight into what I would do in a long-term blackout, a long-term freeze where I didn't have power and the piggy room was getting really cold. So if you have any other ideas or techniques that you've thought of that maybe I didn't mention, put them down in the comments, because we're all in this together, and especially now, unfortunately, if those guys down there in Texas don't have any power, well, maybe they've got some battery power left on their phones and so they can watch this, but when the power comes back on and you see this video and you get that notification, let me know, what did you do to survive the cold snap and the long-term power outage, and what can you recommend for other people? So, because winter's not over yet. So anyways, thanks for watching, and I got to give these guys some pea flakes. So see you next time. You want a pea flake, BB? Okay, you can have a few. You want a pea flake? Mike, you want a pea flake? Gary, you want a pea flake? You want more pea flakes already? Okay. Oh, sorry, BB. These are premium pea flakes. Okay, you can have one more. You sure? You sure you don't want a pea flake? Here you go, Gary. You want another pea flake? There you go. Here, Popeye. I gotta give Billy some pea flakes. Billy, you want a pea flake? You smell Nate's butt, huh? Here, I'll leave you some pea flakes. There you go, Pippi. Pippi, you need a bath today. You want a pea flake? Oh, I dropped it. Here we go. You want a pea flake, Dice? You want another one, Piggy Smalls? You want another one, Piggy Smalls? They recommend you should really only give 5 pea flakes because they can be fattening. How many have we had? That was my first one. You want another one, Dice? Oh my gosh, Popeye. Here, one more. That's it. One more for you. Mikey. Okay, there you go, Popeye. Mikey, you want a pea flake? You're gonna have one more Popeye. You're missing it. It's here. Hey, Ron, you want a pea flake? You want a pea flake? Here you go, Gizmo. You dropped it. Gizmo, come back. Here you go, Ron. Now, of course... Oh, you found it? Here, come on. Get your pea flake. You smell Nate's butt, too. Nate, you have a stinky butt. Okay. Not all piggies have the same tastes. That's just the way it is. Ron says, lucky for me, you don't like pea flakes. I'll have yours. I'll have his pea flakes.
I will have his pea flakes. Give me his pea flakes.
Okay, Gary, you can have one more. You said you don't like them. You want some lettuce, huh? I guess so, since you were such a wonderful model.